Hey, my name is Matt Stohrer and I repair saxophones for a living. Today I would like to show you a 1931-ish Conn C Melody saxophone. Now, the reason I say C Melody like that is because the engraving on this instrument, the Conn Naked Lady engraving that is so famous, it is extremely rare to see on a C Melody instrument. And that's actually one of the reasons that I have a C Melody in my possession. Now, a little bit of history on the C Melody, and this is going to be a different Repairman's overview than usual because I'm going to give out a lot more general information versus specific information for two reasons. One, you're probably not going to see a saxophone exactly like this anywhere. I would say the ones that are exactly like this, the Conn Transitional C Melody with a Naked Lady engraving, maybe there's double digits of those in existence, maybe in the single digits. And particularly one in this fine a shape is extremely rare, which is one of the reasons I worked on it. Because C Melodies are abundant and relatively cheap, which means that people aren't usually paying me to do a full overhaul on them like they would a more valuable instrument that has a bit more of a day-to-day usage than a C Melody does, which has a somewhat limited use compared to normal saxophone because it is in the key of C, which is really great if you want to read off piano music, but if you actually want to play an alto piece or a tenor piece, then you're going to have to transcribe. So if you're playing music written for saxophone, it's probably not written for C Melody. But if you're playing anything in C, then you can just play it without transcribing. And that's the value of a C Melody saxophone. So I want to talk a bit about C Melodies in general, using this as an example, rather than telling you what to look for in this particular saxophone, because you'll probably never see one. Now, the C Melody saxophone, like I said, is in the key of C. The normal saxophones you're used to dealing with are in the key of E flat, as in the case of the sopranino, alto, and baritone, or in the key of B flat, as in the case of the soprano, tenor, and bass saxophones. You will also see every once in a while saxophones in the key of F or C. Now, originally Adolphe Sax was going to be using two families of saxophones, right? And actually, if you look in his original patents, this is what is referenced. The E flat, B flat family was going to be for use in military bands, and the F C version was going to be used orchestrally. Now, most of what we consider of the genre of classical music had been written by the time the saxophone was invented in the mid-1800s. So there's not a whole lot of classical music written for saxophone, which is why you don't see saxophone in orchestra too much. But if classical music had kept on going the way it had been going for several hundred years previous to the invention of the saxophone, then the idea was that the family of F and C saxophones would be in the orchestral use. But that didn't really pan out, so you don't see too many saxophones in the key of F or C, although I do have another Repairman's overview on the Conn F mezzo-soprano saxophone, which is basically an F alto. And here we have a C Melody tenor. Now, when you're buying a C Melody, okay, the reason you have to understand why these were made. Most of the saxophones you're seeing today, if they're C Melodies, were made in the 1920s. In the 1920s, there was a saxophone craze, much the same way that we are in the, I guess, tail end of a electric guitar craze that started in the 80s, where pretty much everybody, if they wanted to play a musical instrument lately, is picking up electric guitar. Where back in the 1920s, the saxophone was the beneficiary of such a movement, which is one of the reasons that you see so much improvement in saxophone design, ergonomics, intonation, and craftsmanship happening in the 1920s, and how much of the stuff built before the 20s feels a lot different than the stuff built after the 20s, because the market was so large that a lot of money was put into making these instruments and designing them and making them better, and we are all the beneficiaries of this to this day. So, in the 1920s, because there was a saxophone craze, people wanted to play their saxophone at home with grandma, and grandma was playing on the piano, because remember, there were not iPods, there was not TV, so if people wanted to have in-home entertainment, usually they were making it themselves. So if you wanted to play along with grandma, who was reading off of music in the key of C, a C saxophone was just the ticket. And they turned out tons of saxophones in the key of C. And These are the ones that you're going to see on eBay most often. Usually they go for a few $100s. And there are many makes. The most common is usually Conn, Bisher, Martin, and there's some Kings as well. Selmer made some. I've seen a balanced action C melody at the Selmer showroom in Paris, but obviously that's exceedingly rare. And some of them have curved necks like a tenor, and some of them have straight necks like an alto. The best C melodies are the later Conns with the straight neck. That's not to say that the Bishers, the Martin, the Kings aren't as good, but the best of them is a straight-necked Conn. So if you're looking for one of these to play and you've got an extra couple $100 to spend on the carcass, because you're not usually going to be buying them already overhauled like this, since they're not too financially reasonable to like overhaul and sell, because you'd be losing money if you did that, look for a straight-necked Conn. The other ones play pretty well, but the key work, the craftsmanship, the intonation, and the tone is, in my opinion, and the opinion of many, best on the straight neck Conns. And as far as what you're going to be looking for specifically on these horns, you can look at my Conn New Wonder Series 2 overview, and you can look at my Conn Transitional overview, and I've got, if you can see on here, we've got these pivot lock screws. I've got a series on that, and this has rolled tone holes. You can pretty much look at my other videos and apply all of that to the C melody, especially the later Conns, to get an idea of what you're looking with these instruments mechanically, and as far as purchasing them, and also the microtuner neck. The main thing you're going to be running into, though, is that people who are selling these usually found them in an attic or pulled them off a wall in a bar, and they don't know if it's a tenor or an alto or a C melody or whatever. And usually, they should have available to them a yardstick, right? So if you want to find out if you've got a C Melody saxophone, ask them to measure from here to here, from the bottom of the bow to the top of the tenon. And obviously this is not a super scientific measuring device, but this is probably what they would have on hand. So you can see a C Melody is about 24 inches, okay? Now if we take a tenor saxophone and compare it, here is a tenor. You can see the size difference, right? A tenor, from top to bottom, is more like 29.5 inches, okay? Maybe, yeah, 29 inches, about that. So that's the easiest way, when someone's selling one of these, that you can find out what instrument they actually have. I'll go ahead and flip this over so you can get a quick idea of what they look like right next to each other. This is a modern Borgani tenor saxophone, and this is the Conn C Melody. So that's the difference in size. And it's interesting because these saxophones sound basically one whole tone apart. So this is the difference of one whole tone. Keyed in C, keyed in B flat. Now as far as the C melodies themselves, basically the later you go, the more friendly the ergonomics are going to be. As you can see on the keywork here, you're basically looking at Conn transitional keywork, which is quite comfortable. It's got the old style New Wonder Series 2 pinky table here. It's got the nice raised and sculpted palm keys and the side E. And this is actually a very comfortable instrument to play. Some people don't like the straight neck, but I don't find it really to be that difficult to use. I actually find the curved neck, particularly because usually the curve on them is pretty severe, to be a little bit more uncomfortable than the straight neck. Now, one thing that you're going to need to keep an eye out for is the mouthpiece. Now, saxophones, the mouthpiece is an often overlooked part acoustically of, pardon me, sorry about that, is an often overlooked acoustic portion of the instrument. And you need to have a mouthpiece that is at least relatively close to the missing portion of the theoretical cone of the instrument, right? Got a long cone coming up here. You need to have something that is at least close to the length and missing volume that you want in order to have it play in tune. So you need, usually, a C Melody mouthpiece to make these play in tune the best. So here is a modern C Melody mouthpiece made by Morgan Mouthpieces, of which I'm a big fan. Here is a vintage C Melody mouthpiece. This is like one that would have came with it. This is a Conn. And here is a vintage tenor piece. And let's see if I've got a modern-ish tenor piece. There's a modern tenor piece, another tenor piece, and get you a hard rubber alto piece as well for comparison. So here's a hard rubber alto piece. Now, the main difference between the old C Melody pieces and a modern alto piece is going to be both the size of the reed. Most of the old ones use tenor reeds, and the internal volume. If you can see here, the interior of that C Melody piece is all scooped out. It's a very large chamber. This is also a large chamber alto piece, but it's smaller than the interior here. Here's the modern Morgan piece. This is a C Melody piece. You can see as well that that's fairly well scooped out. Now obviously, you've got a bit of flexibility with mouthpiece choice, just like you do on any saxophone. But if the instrument you're buying doesn't come with an original C Melody mouthpiece, that is going to be something to consider. You can pick up original C Melody mouthpieces on eBay for not crazy expensive, but they are difficult to find, and the person selling it usually doesn't know that it's a C Melody piece versus a tenor piece. And also, the tip openings are usually extremely small, so you need to get them refaced. This modern C Melody piece, made by Morgan, is a fantastic mouthpiece, but it's a little over $300. So that's something to keep in mind. So, I believe that's about it. I apologize if this is not as long or as in-depth as usual, but I am in a bit of a hurry to get this instrument back to its owner, and also I'm a bit under the weather. Now as far as, let's see, playability for C Melodies, I think I went over this already, but it's actually really good, especially if you've got the horn set up well and you've got the right mouthpiece. They can play excellent. This horn in particular is a fantastic saxophone, whether it's keyed in C or B flat, or if this was an alto. This is a wonderful saxophone, and I really enjoyed playing it quite a bit, and I'm sad to see it go. And it doesn't, intonation is good, playability is good. I really have no complaints about it. Like I said, this could be any saxophone, except it just happens to be a C Melody. I happen to think personally that C Melodies, particularly of the later Conn straight neck kind, are really wonderful saxophones. And if you're looking, if you're not playing in an ensemble that requires alto or tenor or baritone or soprano, if you're just playing with another group and you want to read in C, a C Melody, there's nothing wrong with it. And a lot of times you can get really nice later examples, the Conn New Wonder Series 2 straight necked version. And you can tell when you're looking at a Conn straight neck, if this G sharp key here is cross hatched like this, that's a New Wonder Series 2. If it's smooth, that's a New Wonder Series 1. So if you're looking at fuzzy pictures somewhere, and you know it's a C Melody and you know it's a Conn, look for the straight neck with the cross-hatched G sharp key, and that's going to be the best of the best. But even the earlier ones are really not that bad, especially if you're willing to deal with ergonomics that aren't quite as good. If you've seen my Conn New Wonder Series 1 overview, which I still get guff about, because I'm not in love with those instruments as people buying that for their first vintage saxophone. But if you're willing to deal with ergonomics not being quite as friendly and the build quality not being quite as good, the New Wonder Series 1 C Melodies are good. The Bisher True Tone C Melodies are good. So you've got a lot of options. And yeah, that's about it. So C Melody saxophones, if you're looking for one, if you're thinking about buying one, if you're wondering whether you should. I hope you found this helpful, useful, informative. My name is Matt Stohrer. I repair saxophones for a living, and thanks for watching.